Remember the definition of Islam from the last chapter? We learned that Islam is the belief that God created us and everything else, and that He sent us a man named Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to tell us that the purpose of our creation is to worship and obey God. And Islam is that He will resurrect us after we die in order to bring us to judgment. That's what we want to prove true. The first step in proving it true is to prove the first part of that definition, that God created us and everything else. And in order to prove that true, we need to prove that God exists. So the first thing that we need to do in order to prove that Islam is true is to prove that God exists. But there's a problem. Remember Richard Dawkins, the famous atheist? Here's a famous quote from his famous book, The God Delusion. He said, "I have found it an amusing strategy when asked whether I am an atheist to point out that the questioner is also an atheist when considering Zeus, Apollo, Ammon-Ra, Mithras, Baal, Thor, Wotan, the golden calf, and the flying spaghetti monster. I just go one God further." End quote. Let's put that last part aside for a moment. The flying spaghetti monster has a really interesting story. I'll tell you about that later on in the course. Let's look at all the other gods that he mentions. Zeus, the ancient Greek god of the sky and of thunder, father of all the other gods. Apollo, his son. Ammon-Ra, an ancient Egyptian sun god. He's a combination of two other gods. Mithras, a mysterious Roman god. Baal, god of fertility in Arabia and Mesopotamia. Thor, Norse god of lightning and storms, kind of like Zeus. Wotan, another Norse god. The golden calf. That's what the Israelites worshipped when Moses went up to Mount Sinai. For Richard, Zeus is God, Apollo is God, Ammon-Ra is God, Mithras is God, Baal is God, Thor is God, Wotan is God, and the golden calf is God. But for us, none of these are God. If that's what God is, then God doesn't exist. For us, something else is God. That something else is what we're going to prove exists in this course. But before we prove that that something else exists, we have to know what it is. Because if we don't have a clear conception of what that something else is, we can't prove that it exists. So what we're going to do in this module is to define exactly what that something is. We're going to describe the God that's described in the Quran so that we can prove that He exists. We're going to learn 13 of the clearest things that the Quran says about God. It says many other things as well, but these 13 things are enough for us to get our conception right so that we can prove that God exists. Let's get started. One more thing. Let's go back quickly to Dawkins' quote. What is he saying? Dawkins is saying that he doesn't believe any of these gods exist. That's right. And he's also saying that we agree with him that none of these gods exist. That's right. But then he's saying something else. He doesn't say it clearly here, but he says it in his writings elsewhere. He says that since we don't believe that any of those gods exist, we should also not believe that the God that we worship exists. Because just as there's no evidence for the existence of those gods, there's also no evidence for the existence of our God. Reject the atheist faith frame. Remember that technique from the previous module? We need to use it here. The reason why we believe that our God, but not any of these other gods, exists is because there's evidence for the existence of our God, but no evidence for the existence of those gods. So they're not the same. When Dawkins says that he doesn't believe in those gods, he's right. But when he says he just goes one God further, he's wrong. Don't forget the reject the atheist faith frame technique. It's really strong and it comes up everywhere.